Hello and welcome to the Etoft21sports Show for August 8th. How is everyone doing? My name is Erik. I'm the man behind Etoft21sports. We have a phenomenal show lined up for you today. Jarmell, better known on Twitter at JLewis06, is this week's special guest. If you watched last year, him and I were both very high on the Eagles. If you followed that, you made some money following us on the Eagles. We're previewing the East again. We're going to share any future bet that we have. Nick is going to talk fantasy football in the fantasy football spotlight, and Gino will have his horse racing bet of the day from Del Mar for this Thursday. But before we get into all that, I want to say thank you to the sponsor of the show, the SHARPZ betting app. If you aren't using SHARPZ and you are a sports bettor, you are missing out. It allows you to connect to your betting apps, so it's for easier tracking. There's a message board where you can post your bets, interact with fellow gamblers. Great betting app for a sports bettor. Make sure you download the SHARPZ betting app. Use promo code ETOF499. That way they know old Uncle Rico sent you. Now, let's shift our attention over to horse racing. Let's see what Gino has cooking for us over at Del Mar.
Have the best bet for this week. It's going to come Thursday over at Del Mar. We're going to go to race number 6. Take a look at number 2, acquired class. This guy's going to be dropping in class. He's going to be cutting back in distance. I think he's going to get a really good trip in here because it looks like there's a lot of early speed from the inside. You have the 1, the 3 will likely be forwardly placed in here. I think the 4 is going to be close up. Please Focus is really quick. So is Silent Sunday. The 7, Mendez Mile, is really fast. Cruisin' Man, another one, really, really quick. Rachel's Coach. You notice like all these horses want to be right on the lead. I think it sets up really well for a horse who can come from off the pace in here. Acquired class should be able to do that in this spot, cutting back to 5 furlongs on the turf course here. So let's take a look at the number 2, acquired class. He's 5-1 on the morning line. Eric always asks me, which is a great question you have to ask when you're playing the races, what is my value line? What is the point where my break-even line? 7-2. If he's anything over 3-1, I think that's worthy of a win wager. If he's less than 3-1, he starts to get in that 5-2 range. No thanks, but we want at least 3-1. I'm looking for 7-2 on acquired class. Make sure to tune in every week for all the best information with Eric, and we'll be back to give you another best bet next week.
Please make sure you give my boy Gino a follow at It's Me Gino B. He has a podcast comes out. That's what G said podcast. Beginning of the week, end of the week. I'm on the end of the week episodes talking NFL, NBA, college basketball, college football, whatever the season is. Also, Gino and I are on the DRF Sportsbook show, The Winning Ticket, every single Friday at 6 p.m. Make sure to check that out. Now let's shift our attention over to fantasy football with Nick and see who he's talking about in the fantasy football spotlight.
The player that is in this week's fantasy football spotlight is Isaiah Hodgins. Hodgins is currently an ADP of 234 and is wide receiver 73, which is insane to me. Hodgins from week 13 to week 17, noting that we are not including week 18 due to him not playing, in that 5-game span to close the season, he was wide receiver 13 and averaged 15.2 fantasy points per game. Also, in that 5-game span to close the season, Hodgins scored a touchdown in 4 of the 5 games and had every one but one of the Giants receiving touchdowns. During that same time frame, Hodgins had a 21% target share, was second in the league in touchdowns, 17th in catches, and 32nd in yards. I know that the Giants have made additions to the offense, but those players are slot wide receivers. Hodgins is an outside wide receiver, and with the current set of Giants wide receivers, I project Hodgins to maintain the 80% snap share he had to close the season. With the close to the season that Hodgins had and the clear connection that him and Jones formed to close the season and the lack of outside wide receivers for the Giants, this is why I am targeting Hodgins this season, and that's why he is in this week's fantasy football spotlight.
Please give my boy Nick a follow at NAA Fantasy on Twitter. Nick is on my podcast every single week talking fantasy football. We are currently in the middle of doing a team-by-team preview in terms of fantasy, telling you the players to target, giving you our thoughts on basically everyone that's relevant on the roster. This week on my podcast, which comes out on Friday, we're going to be talking about the Vikings, Jaguars, and the New York Giants. Now, let's welcome the special guest to the show this week, better known at JLewis06 on Twitter, Jarmell. Jarmell, how you doing today, my man?
Doing good. How about you?
You know what, dude? I'm doing pretty good, man. Actually, no, I'm going to complain, dude. You know, some people are talking about it in the chat room. Flipping O's, unbelievable. WTF Baltimore. I know that was an awful beat. I had Baltimore for the first 5 plus 105 and for the game plus 110.
Mm-hmm.
They gave up a grand slam home run in the top of the 9th to lose at 7-6. The joys of betting August baseball. The joys. But you know what? They covered the first 5. Small ROI on the night. I'm still in the green. I can't complain. I should have been 2-0. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. The joys.
That's tough. Staying away from baseball, man.
I know.
You're going to stay away from baseball.
You know what? Have to fade someone after the no-hitter. But we're not here to talk about baseball. We're here to talk about the NFC East. It's been a hot minute, man. How's Memphis, dude?
Man, loving it. Loving Memphis. Always. I'm loving it in Memphis.
Now, we're here to talk the NFC East. Last year, you and I were quite adamant about the Eagles. We're very high on the Eagles. For those watching, if you tailed, you made some money. Jarmell had them, I believe, winning the East, coming out of the NFC and winning the Super Bowl. I had the same thing. So if you tailed, you made some money, and hopefully we can do the same thing for you this year, because you know what? It's completely different this year with what's going on. So let's talk about the Eagles first. Last year, they finished 14-3. The Fagram win total 11.45 to win the Super Bowl this year, plus 650. NFC plus 250. NFC East minus 135 to make the playoffs. Yes, minus 500. No, plus 400. Over under 11.5. Talk to me about our Eagles, man. Are they our baby Eagles this year, or are we moving on? What's your thought process?
It's really hard still looking at this team. Looking at what they picked up in the draft on defense, I mean, they pretty much have Georgia's defense. That championship defense that Georgia had, they pretty much have that. It's tough to not go with this team again. It's really tough. I haven't made a decision on if I'm going to lock them in or not. I do think they hit the over 11.5. Maybe just barely hitting 12 or 13. But as far as they'll make the playoffs, the 500, I do think they'll make the playoffs. This is a tough team to beat. This is a tough team to bet against.
First off, for me, I love Jalen Hurts. I love this kid. I think he's great. And when you hear his story about everything he kind of like overcame coming to Alabama, Kiffin recruited him. Saban really didn't want him there. Did his job, went to Oklahoma, led Oklahoma, came to Philly. No one really wanted him at Philly, led Philly to the Super Bowl. He just keeps on showing up and keeps on just doing his thing. Absolutely love this kid. Got to give props to the coaching system. They put him in a system to succeed. Obviously, a rushing-based attack. What makes the attack really elite is because all the points of attack, it can attack a defense. They run the wide zone. They run the normal zone. They mix in RPO with Hurts. They do the power runs. They do the gap runs. There is a million different rushing attacks they can do. Now, obviously, Miles Sanders isn't there. They picked up former Lion DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, and they still have Kenneth Gainwell. You look at that three-headed monster, probably the best backfield in all the NFL when you look at those three. I have one of my guys on site at camp, and he made an interesting thing to me, and I wanted to ask you what you thought about this. Gainwell is the one getting all the reps in the 2-minute drill. What are your thoughts? Does that kind of surprise you? Because I thought it would be Swift, not Gainwell.
Honestly, no, it doesn't. Because I look at in the 2-minute drill, they're probably going to end up running a lot of screens because you're going to have to you're gonna have to double cover AJ Brown or Devontae Smith. And so I feel like in the 2-minute drill, you're gonna run a lot of screens. And I feel like Gainwell has the more explosive ability to take those the distance than Swift. I'm not surprised he's getting more reps in the 2-minute drill. Not at all.
Their passing attack, basically it's 2 deep routes with 2 to 3 underneath routes, depending on the formation they're in. You know, that's why Smith and Brown are explosive in the passing game. Also, it's important to note they have a new play caller in Brian Johnson. Johnson has known Hurts, this blew my mind too, since he was a kid. Johnson played for Hurts's old man in high school. So they have had this connection since he was in middle school. But I'm always worried about the first-time play caller. You know what I mean? The first time under the light, first time calling the plays. Eagles, important to note, one of the most analytical teams in the NFL. Offensive line, they have one of the best in the league. But this year, they did lose some key backups to other teams that are now starters. So in the past, it was just next man up. If they are bitten by the injury bug again, I'm a little worried that this offensive line could take that step backwards. They also lost their DC. They're replacing him with Sean Desai, who's from the Vic Fangio coaching tree. He was basically going to keep everything the same with the big focus on stopping the run. We need to remember last year they really struggled stopping the run until they made those additions of Sue, and I'm spacing on the other player, during the midseason after the Washington game, because Washington really ran over them. Okay. They drafted Carter from Georgia, as you mentioned, to help stop that issue. Another thing with the Eagles is they tend to drop their linebackers in coverage, which means they really don't blitz that much. Thus, they're relying on the organic pass rush. The 2 keys for their defense, in my eyes, are can they stop the run, and how is Desai going to be calling the plays? You know what I mean? How is he going to be being as the play caller? Obviously, I look at it like this. I'm kind of a trends guy. There is that trend of teams after they go to the Super Bowl and losing, betting that under's juiced to -140. So I'm just gonna kind of sit back and just, you know what I mean? Like I'll take Jalen Hurts in fantasy.
Yeah.
I'll take AJ Brown. I'll take Devontae Smith. I'll even take their tight end Dallas Goedert. But in terms of the running backs, I really don't want anything. In terms of betting wise, you know, I think I'm out on the Eagles. Maybe some game to game stuff, but
I think it's a trap, man.
I'm sorry?
Numbers, the win total is too high. Yeah. I mean, the team is great, but this is the NFC East we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And first of all, there hasn't been a repeat division winner in the NFC East in 20 years. 2003, 2004, the Eagles repeat as champions. So there hasn't been a repeat champion in 20 years in this division. I don't know if they can do it. I just don't know if the curse is broken this year. I mean, they were the last team to do it, but I don't know.
But I mean, I don't know. There's one other team I'm interested in, but then when I looked at their O-line was awful. Dallas is Dallas. New York's schedule, we'll get to that a little bit, is absolutely brutal. I mean, maybe they win it by default. We did just see a question in the chat. Hurts or Lamar in fantasy?
Hurts. I'm going Hurts. He can play a full season, I know.
I will go Hurts all day. Dave, what is up, my friend? Also, now we're going to shift over to the aforementioned Dallas Cowboys. 12-5 last year. Pythagorean win total 11.2. Super Bowl 14-1. NFC plus 600. NFC East plus 190. Make the playoffs -230. Not make the playoffs plus 195. Over under 10.5. What say you about them Cowboys?
Under 10.5. I think they struggle this year. I really do. I don't believe in Dak. I know I got a degree from Mississippi State.
Whoa, are you allowed not to believe in Dak when you have a degree from Mississippi State? Is that allowed, man?
Yeah. It's got to be. He plays for Dallas. It's got to be allowed, man. It's got to be allowed. Yeah, and they let go of Elliott. Do they? I mean, Pollard's great, but who else? If Pollard goes down, who else do they have?
Nobody. That's the thing. And in
Who
one
are
of
the
my
receivers? Did they upgrade in receiver from last year?
they did add Brandon Cooks.
Did they upgrade in receiver from last year? My question is that big of an upgrade to make that much of a difference in that receiving core?
I like Brandon Cooks. I'm a Brandon Cooks guy. I think like him coming in and with the offense they're going to be, he basically just has to run go routes and him not be the man. I think that's perfect for him. Because obviously most people are going to go to CD and everything. They'll just put him on the outside, try to extend the field with the change in offense that they have. In terms of the running back room, like my notes, to me, I know the big news is like Dalvin Cook to the Jets. I really don't think anyone's sitting back and saying, hey, that's the missing piece for the New York Jets. I kind of feel that Dalvin Cook going to the Cowboys, that makes more sense to me than Dalvin Cook going to the Jets. What about you?
I think that really makes more sense. I mean, the Jets just drafted Breece Hall. So, I mean, you have a back there.
Yeah.
I don't feel like bringing in Dalvin Cook would help. And you already have a two-back system in Dallas. So bringing in Dalvin Cook, who's a bruiser back, I don't see why not. It would really help out that backfield.
I think that would be to me that's the signing that makes sense. Obviously, Kellen Moore is not there anymore. Brian Schottenheimer is coming over. He's the OC, but Big Mike McCarthy is now the play caller. And that means a change in the offense. It's basically going to be more spread with a ton of deep routes. That's why I think Brandon Cook fits well here. They're just going to put him on an island, just basically have him run and fly and posts. And I mean, I think for Cooks at this point of his career, I think that's great for him. In terms of Tony Pollard, with the change in offense, it means less RPOs. So we're not going to see him rush the ball, I don't think, as much. He's not going to be a factor in the passing game because the passing game changes. And he wasn't even that big of a factor to begin with. So what? Now he gets 2 targets. And a thing that blew my mind, he's never gone over 200 touches in his career until last year. How is he going to adapt coming into this year after having that wear and tear of 200 touches? And he's listed at 6 foot, 209 pounds. In my eyes, that means he's 5'10", $195. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and then
he's not that big, and I think that's a lot of wear and tear for him. In my eyes, you got to bring back Elliott. You know, we just talked about bringing in Cook. I think you got to do something like that because I don't think Pollard can maintain the season. Also, they changed offensive line coaches, which means a change kind of in how they're going to run the ball. They're going to go to an inside zone team now instead of an outside zone team. So now you're running Pollard in between
the tackles.
You know what I mean? Like, so to me, it just doesn't make sense why you don't get a Cook, or maybe you make that call and try to trade for Josh Jacobs, you know, because Jacobs is out. Try to trade for Jonathan Taylor. I don't know if they can afford him. Just kind of something with the scheme that you're going to be doing. On also looking at his splits, the new offensive line coaches splits, the offensive line under him in his tenure excelled at run blocking, struggled at pass blocking. So how is Dak going to fear when pressured? Because last year he turned over the ball a lot. So we need to remember that. Cowboys defense, when you have Armstrong and Parsons, you're going to be able to get to the quarterback. You're going to be able to pressure the quarterback. You're going to be able to make the quarterback uncomfortable. It's going to make everybody better. The biggest weakness last year was their inability to stop the run. That's why they drafted Smith to address that. You have Armstead, Lawrence, Parsons, Diggs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a legit defense. And take a deep breath, my friend, for what I'm going to say. Take a real deep breath.
All right. Lay it on me, man.
This is a championship level defense. Championship level defense with what they have, but they don't have a championship level offense. I'm not a Dak guy. I'm not a Lamb guy. I'm not a Pollard guy. I'm not a Mike McCarthy guy. I think their defense is going to keep them in a lot of games. They're going to be very limited offensively with the changes going on. I'm with you, dude. I lean to the under on the Cowboys.
Yeah. So this is going to be a shocker. I agree. They do have a championship level defense. That defense is really good. And it's only going to get better because a lot of their key players are very young. Like you said, my problem comes in with the offense and Mike McCarthy being the play caller. And what you just mentioned about the offensive line splits and not being able to hold up in pass blocking. If he's going to a more spread scheme and going to want to run a lot of deep routes, they're going to have to pass block. Dak is going to need time. So, I mean,
it's like two things that don't work
together.
together. You know what I mean? It's like you got two things that don't work together. You have an undersized running back. You're trying to funnel in between the tackles now. That, you know, talking it out right now between the two of us. Maybe
I'm trying to make it make sense.
Maybe two player props we need to look at is Tony Pollard under rushing yards.
Yeah. And
Dak to lead the league in interceptions.
Man, look, I took Dak's under passing yards last year, if you remember correctly. The under 4,400, and that cashed. That might be the go again. With the way things are looking, I don't know. Does he make it through the season again? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
With that offensive line, does he make it through the season again? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't trust the passing either. I'm pulling this up, dude. Let's take a little look. I'm pulling this up right now. We're gonna go rushing yards, and we're gonna see it. We're gonna see if they have one for Tony Pollard. Ooh, 1,050.5 rushing yards. I think, you know what? I'm locking it in. Tony Pollard under 1,050.5 rushing yards. That is my bet for the Dallas Cowboys. Let's see if they have INTs. QB INTs. Dak Prescott over under 12.5.
Here's the problem. I'm not sure he plays a full season again. Yeah, that's my problem with betting on that. I'm not 100% sure that he plays the full season. If he doesn't play the full season, he can't hit that over. That's what scares me. I don't.
And I'll be honest, like you mentioned a good thing. A lot of the times with these player props, I love betting unders, just because guys do miss times. Guys do get banged up. You know, think about this. Hypothetically, if Elliott or Cook, Josh Jacobs, Taylor, one of those two gets traded, one of the first two signs there, think of how much this 1050.5 is going to drop.
Yeah.
You know, I think so. You know, I'm locking it in. Tony Pollard under 1,050.5 yards rushing. Now, let's go to one of the surprise teams last year, the New York Football Giants. 9-7-1, Pythagorean win total 8.16, Super Bowl plus 6,500, NFC plus 2,500, NFC East plus 850 to make the playoffs. Yes, missed the playoffs, minus 190, over under 7.5. What say you about the New York Giants?
Over 7.5, and I'm about to shock the world here because I picked the Giants winning the division.
Ooh,
I got a bet plus 750 on the Giants to win the NFC East.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. I know, shocking the world. I know. It's Daniel Jones has only gotten better under Brian DeBoer. His numbers has improved. His rating has improved. They added Darren Waller. They drafted Jalen Hyatt. Now, the defense is a little risky because they ranked 31st in defense. But I think Daniel Jones takes that step. And it's the NFC East. Like I said, there hasn't been a repeat champion in 20 years. while the Eagles look great on paper, all it takes is one man to go down at the right time. I think at plus 750, I can't not take the Giants to win the NFC East, especially after them showing improvement last season. And I think Daniel Jones is going to make some noise.
Now, you mentioned let's retract one thing you said.
Yep.
You mentioned about the Eagles. We don't know if Carter's going to be suspended. He had that whole driving incident in Georgia. We don't. Is he?
That is true.
You know what? And if and hypothetically, let's say he doesn't miss time, everyone's just assuming he's going to just immediately transcend and be this phenomenal run stopper. It usually takes a little bit of time until, you know what I mean? Until a defensive lineman is able to do his thing.
To adjust, especially with the way these offensive linemen are playing nowadays.
And they're missing, and they lost both play callers on offense and defense. So it's very feasible that the Eagles could struggle a little bit this year. And then you have the DeBoll, who's, I mean, this guy's a genius. He's a smart dude. And he puts his players in an opportunity to succeed. And you know what? Take a deep breath, everyone. You're not going to like what I'm going to say. He did the same thing with Josh Allen that he's doing with Daniel Jones. Multiple wide receiver sets, outside routes. You just run flies, deep post or goes. That's it. The slot and the tight end, crossing routes with everything kind of hooking, coming back to the quarterback. They give him 1 to 2 reads. If it's not there, they just tell him to run the ball. That's what he did with Josh Allen. That's what he did with Daniel Jones. And then in the second year, we saw Allen take that big step. And I think we could see Allen take that big step forward. Now, when he was with Buffalo, really didn't use the running game. Comes to New York, I got Saquon Barkley back here. I'm going to start running the ball now. But when I looked at the splits, the big thing that stood out to me, Barkley averaged a whole yard more rushing per attempt when Jones was under center versus the RPO and versus the shotgun type plays. So that's one thing that kind of stood out to me. Barkley obviously more comfortable running when Jones was under center. The passing game, that's the future market I want to be in with the Giants. My first bet for the New York Giants, and I took a flyer on this one. Hyatt 40-1 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. When I look at how many weapons the Giants have, they're all inside guys. Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Paris Campbell, Darren Waller, tight end. They're all inside guys. The only guys that are really set on the outside are you have Hyatt and you have Hodgins, who Nick talked about earlier. Those are the guys I want to attack in the future market. So how am I attacking Hyatt? I took a small flyer at 40-1. I get someone that's probably going to be on the field 70 to 75% of the time. And I know everyone's in love with Bijan. I'm in love with Bijan too. I'm in love with the Falcons too. But it's not a gimme. He's just going to win the award. So I'm seeing 41 and a guy that's going to get a lot of time. I absolutely love it. My next one is this. Nick mentioned my boy Hodgins, over 500.5 yards receiving. That's it. Are you kidding me?
That's it.
That is it. He became Jones's favorite target at the end of the season. 21% target share, averaging 5.5 targets, 5 receptions, and 50 yards per game. And then we saw in the wild card game, a must-win situation. He established himself as the number 1 threat. 9 targets, 8 receptions, a $105, and 1 TD. Nick talked about it. He was getting he had all the receiving touchdowns the back half of the season from week 13 on, but 1, which is amazing to me. He has the relationship with Jones. He's going to be on the field 80% of the time. I mean, to me, this is an absolute no-brainer. Unless he gets hurt. Unless he gets hurt, that would be the thing. I don't know. I think people are overreacting to the Waller signing, but he's going to be playing the middle. He's going to be playing tight end.
Exactly.
He has no relationship with Jones. So I like Hodgins over 500.5 yards receiving. In terms of the offensive line, they're young and they're growing. Andrew Thomas, huge leaps after year 1 to year 2. Really established himself. but they need Neal to do the same thing. Neal really struggled last year at the right tackle position. They need him to make that big leap that Thomas made last year. They drafted my boy from Minnesota, JMS at center. I like that guy. I think he's immediately going to make the line better just because of his awareness and how good I think he's going to transcend. Second year in the system, we kind of see the offensive line when there's a new coach, new system coming in, kind of struggle a little bit that first year. Second year is when they kind of balloon. So I think they're going to take a step forward. You mentioned their defense. You have Martindale. And what does Martindale do? Blitz, 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 and more blitz.
Yeah.
Martindale's system, and this is what I kind of like about it. It allows the defensive players to call the blitz. So he calls a play in, and then you could have a captain just be like, no, we're doing this instead. We're blitzing instead. So that kind of like stood out to me because it puts more trust and more responsibility on the players, and they tend to like that a lot. When he doesn't blitz, he drops everyone back in coverage. So teams really were successful running the ball on him. Look, in DFS, I'm going to be attacking them a lot with opposing running backs. If there's like a lower price guy, someone like a B-Rob, Brian Robinson, I'll be attacking him. But in terms of the futures market, I'm only taking Hyatt and I'm only taking Hodgins over. Those are the only ones I want with the Giants. My one worry with them is, and this kind of stood out for me, first 11 weeks, they only have 4 home games.
Yeah. They have a brutal. The schedule is brutal. They do a lot of traveling.
But Danny Jones, Danny Money when he's on the road as a dog, dude.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's going to be on the road and probably going to be a dog a lot because that's a brutal schedule.
Now, let's make our last team. The Washington Commanders. They were 7-9-1 last season. Pythagorean win total 8.59 to win the Super Bowl plus 6,500. Win the NFC plus 4,000. NFC East plus 1,600. Make the playoffs plus 300. Not make the playoffs minus 370. Over under 6.5. What say you, my friend?
Before today, I would have said over 6.5. But I read today that some of the players I'm not going to say aren't too happy, but just kind of read that they were concerned regarding Eric Bieniemy, their new OC, and his coaching style. So, with this team, there's always something. There's always something going on with them. I don't know what this is the one. Could they be the dark horse with a new offensive coordinator, new owner, new quarterback? I don't know. I do have one future out on them though. Well,
okay. What is it, my friend?
I have Emmanuel Forbes, Defensive Rookie of the Year,
Ooh,
at plus 1,600.
I like that.
I know everybody says he's undersized, but the kid can find the ball, and if he finds it, he can put it in the end zone.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
I've seen multiple clips of highlights of him getting pick sixes in training camp. He holds the NCAA record for career pick sixes with 6.
I like that.
This defense, Chase Young is back. He has an opportunity. He can play the nickel. He can play out wide. He has an opportunity to get a lot, especially with a lot of the coaches going to more passing schemes. I mean, he's going to get opportunities against Philly because he's going to have to probably cover Smith or Brown. He'll get opportunities against Dallas with their new scheme. He'll get opportunities against the Giants to get picks and make plays. The opportunity is there, and at plus 1,600, I couldn't pass up on that value, especially with the defensive line that the Commanders have with Chase Young coming back healthy, being able to get pressure on the quarterback creates a lot more of those opportunities.
That's a great bet, dude. That is a great value. I like that one a lot. My thing with the Commanders, the day has finally come. There's no more Scott Turner. Anyone that listened to my stuff knows how much I hated Scotty. I thought he never should have been an OC in the league. Eric Bieniemy coming in, he is going to use every formation in the playbook and a ton of pre-snap motion to kind of have the defense show its hands to make stuff easier. A new quarterback, Sam Howell. But my issue with what broke today, and those listening who don't know, Ron Rivera, a report came out, and then Rivera backed it that some of the players feel that Bieniemy is being too hard on him. So my thing is this. A lot of the times in the NFL room, you can come into the office, you can say something, and it's just confidential. Now you have Rivera going in front of the media and saying that. That rubbed me the wrong way. That was number one.
Same.
Number two, this is football. This is a coach. He's trying to make you better.
Exactly.
He's an old school coach. You guys were awful last season. Maybe this is what you guys need. You know what I mean? Maybe this is what you guys need. You know, he's probably just yelling at you, telling you to be better. To me, this kind of tells me how soft these guys are and how poor they do with when they face conflict.
Yep.
Now, back to the X's and O's. They'll be using a lot of RPO because of Sam Howell. And when I looked back at Howell at North Carolina, very productive rusher, very good running the ball. One of the things I was looking at, I wanted to see if I could find a prop for Sam Howell rushing yards for the season because I feel it's going to be really low. I also kind of feel to start the season, it's going to be a little low. So I think like last year with Daniel Jones, when Jones first became a quarterback, we could kind of take advantage of the rushing yard props with Sam Howell. Yep. So that's one thing I'm going to look to do on a game-by-game basis. With Bieniemy, they're going to look to run the ball. They're going to use B-Rob and Antonio Gibson. And I'll be honest, if I'm in fantasy, I'd probably draft both of them, and you could probably start both of them every week because then you get all the production in the backfield. Yep. Also, they have Chris Rodriguez from Kentucky. That dude's a stud. That dude is an absolute stud. So this is a loaded backfield. Wide receiver room. They have Jalen Dotson. When you look at his production with how little he played last year, insane production. They have Scary Carey, phenomenal wide receiver, constantly over 1,000 yards. Curtis Samuel, who was doing Debo Samuel things before Debo was doing Debo things.
Yep. Exactly.
Excuse me. So they have a lot of weapons. If Howell can perform, this offense will be good, and they could be a dark horse to win the East. But then I looked at their offensive line.
Yep.
This could be one of the worst offensive lines in the league. They did little to improve it in the offseason. They drafted 2 interior players, both of whom I had insanely low on my board, and I think this unit's going to struggle to protect. Yet another reason why I like Sam Howell's rushing yards because he's going to be running for his life pretty much every other snap when he drops back. Defense, as you mentioned, is solid. Chase Young, he's playing for money. He didn't get that 5th-year option.
Yep.
So he's playing for that next contract. Finally recovered from that ACL injury. Him next to Allen, next to Payne, next to Sweat. That's going to be hard as hell.
Yes.
For opposing quarterbacks hard as hell with them getting to opposing quarterbacks. One of the issues was they really didn't have a true middle linebacker. They got Barton from Seattle. Now they have the middle linebacker tack solid. Someone patrolling the middle of the field, which is huge. And with how good their D-line is, their secondary, it's not going to be asked to do much because they're going to make the quarterback rush through their progressions. I like this team, but their offensive line is so goddamn bad. Excuse my language. I'm out. If they had, hypothetically, let's say you change the Giants and the Commanders' offensive lines, I'd be all in on this Commanders team. But I just don't think they're going to win at the point of attack enough to be able to do anything. I think this is a team we have to look to bet on a week-to-week basis when they're in a good situational spot. I think we need to look to bet Sam Howell rushing props to start the season. If a year-long one happens, I think we can look to bet that. But in terms of like futures, I just really can't do anything with offensive line,
Man, I'm I'm gonna be honest. The reason I'm staying away from this team has nothing to do with football and everything to do with everything off the field. It's always something with this squad, man. Like, and it's got to be a distraction. I mean, regardless of what people say, even fans talking about the team name changing. As a player, that's got to be a distraction to an extent. Your team always being in the media in a negative light. I mean, you got a new owner, but you're not going to get away from Dan Snyder, like the Dan Snyder situation like that.
Let's not forget last year, the Sean Taylor. Like, they had Taylor. They're supposed to do this big like thing for him, and it was embarrassing. It like his jersey was on a mannequin, and there were so many flaws with the jersey. The jersey, like, it should have been like a Reebok jersey, it was a Nike jersey, problem with the cleats, and it was just on a mannequin. It was the most disrespectful, half-assed thing I've ever seen in my life when you're honoring one of the greats that was taken away from this planet way too soon. And then you have the stadium. I don't know if you remember the clip. The railing on the stadium fell off. Like, Jalen Hurts was
busted in the stadium earlier in the season.
Water coming down when it was raining. It's just, it is just a complete cluster off there. And you're right. Maybe they do need to get a new stadium. Maybe they do need to get a new coaching staff. You know, maybe they just need to do a hard reset with everything. But when you kind of look at their offensive weapons, you know, Antonio Gibson, you know, he went to your boys. He was in Memphis. E-Rob, who was a stud at Bama. Scary Terry, Dotson, Curtis Samuel.
They have so much potential, man. So much potential. So many weapons. It's just,
and you look at their defense, and then you look at their offensive line. It's just one of those things.
How did their offensive line get that way though, man? Because it was at one point it was one of the best in the NFL.
Yeah, but it just goes to just not addressing it and having a bad general manager. When you look at these kids they drafted, I'll take a team like the Seahawks. I loved what the Seahawks did 2 years ago. You drafted 2 bookend tackles. You have your 2 tackles now. You have your left, you have your right. This year, why didn't you draft 2 interior guys? You know what I mean? I'm always like, I like what the Lions did. And you're kind of finally seeing that. Lions were brutal forever, but they finally got their offensive line set. And when they got their offensive line set, then they started building around. You get a journeyman quarterback in Goff who really wasn't doing anything and who's a lame duck with the Rams. Now he's succeeding. You're able to get St. Brown in like the 7th round, who's a stud. Like, to me, you got to build from the inside out. So, like, I don't know.
It starts in the trenches, man. It starts in the trenches. Everything starts with the offensive and defensive line. And if you don't have a good offensive defensive line, you can't win football games.
Exactly. And I really think people absolutely forget that. Anyone that knows me knows I love trenches, and you have to be solid there. Jarmell, always great catching up with you, talking some NFC East. Make sure to give him a follow at JLewis06 on Twitter. We're going to have to talk, my friend. We'll have to find a week during the season when you can come on. We can catch up, kind of talk. Is there anything before I let you go that you want to plug, my friend?
So yeah, I do. My No Sweat No Bet podcast will be back before the regular season starts. So it'll be a bi-weekly podcast.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right, make sure to check that out. Next week, we're going to be back. We're going to be previewing the AFC South with Sterling from Silver Star Sports. Jarmell, thanks for coming on, talking some NFC. Let's cash some tickets.
Thanks for having me, man.
You know what, man? Thanks for coming on. I look forward to having you on again. Let's cash some tickets. Let's make some money. Until next week, everybody.